That's regarding speed and precision. This is something. This is how you I'm supposed to analyze how you can before I played. Let's see. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So around 20 moves to my opponent and do the moves on it. Forget. Opponent move 18 to F4 to blunder. Double question mark on knight E4. Bishop takes C4. Knight takes C4. Queen moves out the way. Knight takes bishop. Knight moves out the way. Moves down. Knight takes rook. Rook. King takes. And then queen to D6. Well, my opponent resigned. The point is this. I'm going to teach about how I drew playing against myself, Stockfish, from that position onwards, and talking about the concept of speed and precision. This is a study guide I am practicing against Stockfish. They dissected, dismantled, stars, engines. I'm talking about level 8 from freaking Lead Chess, not the Stockfish, version 8 through sharp system defense. I maintain a crushing advantage until the end of the game. 4 points, about 8 keys and 2 points. This conclusion they draw is by 3-4 repetition. I calculate a strategic choice. I prioritize speed and simplification over ruling 50 main technical conversion. This guide explores the draw horizon and the logic of trading a winning advantage for a quick resolution. Let's go. Move 1 to 4. Pawn goes king pawn opening. I go C5 Sicilian defense. Now C, I'm good for a follow up. Trying to pressure some bunch squares. Pawn to E6. I don't know the name of this, but I believe. Let's go to Master's Database. Make sure this is correct. Oh yes, the Sicilian defense. That's the French variation. It goes. And this is the B40 in the opening. Freaking thing. And immediately goes on. What's it called? 1, 2, 4. 3. She takes C4. Knight takes D4. Knight to F6. And I'm freaking knight to E5. Knight to C3. C3. What the hell? No, E5. I'm sorry, I got so confused. This time? Let me go back. Okay, E4 to C5. Knight F3. Pawn to E6. The freaking opposite. This and then D4, C6, D4, knight to F6, and then pawn to E5. Thinking there's a booting of my knight. However, there is a sharp line of a counter check where I'm able to gain back the pawn with this, as you see, the geometrical shape of this queen. E5. I immediately go queen to A5 check, tactical strike, exploring the loose E5 pawn, double attack. My opponent immediately goes knight to C3. I'm at knight to E4. Knight to, where the fuck is that? Knight to C3. And then immediately queen takes E5. Let's go pawn to bishop E2. Using the bishop to block. Instead of trading off the queens, which I would have done. And then knight to C6. Freaking bishop B3, supporting the knight. I strike into center with light squares because the dark square pawn got traded off. So I decided to go and do this type of fauna, guarding all the dark squares, and then using the queen side counterplay in this knight as an outpost. Then in the future, pawn to D5, queen to D2, queen to B8, castles queen side, get bishop B4, pawn to G4, which I don't even understand what that was. It doesn't even make sense to me. I believe you're trying to do a bait, so I immediately go knight to E4, attacking the queen. Queen moves back, bishop takes, pawn takes C3, freaking knight to E5. Queen E5, bishop blocks, queen to B4, A5, kicking out the queen, and I was thinking my phone was gonna go like this, and then I was gonna freaking offer the queen trade and continue. That's what I was gonna think. But the point remains the same. So I castle, 17, knight to F3, pawn to F3, knight to D6, pawn to F4, and knight jumps and forks the queen and the dark square bishop, which is going to substantially take the rook. So light square bishop, knight takes, forks queen and bishop. Now just keeps really losing. My opponent resigns here. I take bishop. Knight Stockfish does that for the knight. I take the rook. Stockfish takes no. I was using the king instead of the rook for some odd reason. Queen to D6, centralizing the queen, defending the pawn chain, putting out dark squares because the dark square bishop was traded off. So my light square bishop is going to dominate the light squares. My queen is going to dominate the dark squares. And as we continue from this, we're going to talk about the draw horizon and logic of speed. As the developer, identified the bit board simplification. When I'm playing, as you can see, move 53, I go bishop c6, where I effectively delete the win condition from the board to save time. The decision was this: I were up a bishop and have one pawn left. Trading the rook for that pawn reduces the board king to rook and king versus rook, which is a dead draw on the database. I understood it took understood because to choose the end game 10 seconds rather than trying 10 minutes against Edge's perfect defense setup. Bishop versus rook ending. Now, let's see how we're gonna go. Masterclass how to handle draws and games, but how we can last them, or how you can. So now queen to b2, 6, queen to c1, rook to c8, queen to e3, queen to oh god, rook c4, knight to d4, outpost, queen pins knight to queen, king moves to defend the queen, pawn pushes up to continuously try to build a better pawn structure and dominate the dark square with these pawns, and then give the king some luck to potentially evade later. g5, push, counter strike, take, and this was me still playing very fast. So I didn't have enough time I wasn't thinking about calculating, I was just going for simplification, pattern recognition. Queen trade to simplify, takes, pushes the pawn to defend the other pawn, rook to a4, rook defends pawn, king steps out, pushes, takes, king to e3, rook e6, sacrificing, as you see, to sacrifice the rook, but to simplify and remove Stockfish's minor piece. Bishop takes, rook goes. I simply undouble Stockfish's pawn, so I'm playing very quickly, but completely I missed just to continually simplify. That attacks rook, moves out of the way, king steps to safety, pawn takes, pushes rook moves forward, freaking rook a4 on rook on the second rank, rook to freaking a2, rook there, rook takes, bishop blocked, rook up to the third rank. The Stockfish is trying to take all the pawns, so eventually making it into a draw endgame. I attack the rook, Stockfish pushes, I snuggle rook to a1 to get behind the pawn and to get into a Fedor-like position to check the king and to stop this pawn from promoting. Pawn to e7, rook e1 check, rook e1 check, king to c4. Then I push to check and then go rook to h1 to stop the pawn from promoting. Rook to a5, rook to h7, freaking d5. Now I offer a trade to my bishop saying I'm gonna force a draw now. I'm gonna simply force a draw, and if I go here, it's losing because the king gets to support the pawn and the rook gets to team up on this pawn, and if there's one rook, I'm not gonna be able to win. So as you see, I go king to c6 for win, c7, putting a reverse Lucaeus position where my king and rook is the bridge, and my king is going to constantly just step out the way, discover check, and then my rook slides up. King supports, so this pawn pushes and this rook constantly watches, and my king steps behind the rook to simply just dance around, and this king is not going to be able to get out of position because I'll simply just check with the king supporting, and that's how to draw. So c4, and then we do a dance and win. But point is, as we're going to summarize this video, is how to handle draws and games. To last, you eventually conquer engines in the spots where you must understand liquidation theft roll. The last pawn rolls this in endgames. When you're up a minor piece, the opponent's goal is to eliminate all the pawns. If you can trade all the pawns for an extra piece, your win evaporates. So maintain the squeeze to win, you must refuse to simplify. Use your extra pieces for restriction, cutting out the kingdom rather than capturing. Engine cannot pass by making winning moves with your rook. You force the engine to move its king away from the last defense of the last pawn. So that's what I hope you guys will learn. Even though I decided to draw against Stockfish, you could win even in this position, and that's how you get a 99% accuracy game. So, thank you guys, and I hope you guys love this video. Then I push to check, and then go rook to h1 to stop the pawn from promoting. Rook to a5, rook to h7, freaking d5. Now I offer a trade to the bishops. Offer a trade to my bishop saying, okay, I'm gonna force a draw now. I'm gonna simply force a draw, and if I go here, it's losing because the king gets to support the pawn and the rook gets to team up on this pawn, and if there's one rook, I'm not gonna be able to win. So as you see, I go king to c6 for win. Rook c7, putting a sort of reverse Lucaeus position where my king and rook is the bridge, and my king is going to constantly just step out the way, discover check, and then my rook slides up. King supports, so this pawn pushes, and this rook constantly watches, and my king steps behind the rook to simply just dance around. And this king is not going to be able to get out of position because I'll simply just check with the king supporting. And that's how to draw. So c4, and then we do a dance. And then we do a dance. And win. Imagine doing something stupid like that. But point remains this, as we're gonna summarize this video, is how to handle draws endgames. To last, you eventually conquer engagements in the spots where you must understand liquidation theft roll. The last pawn rules this in endgames. When you're up a minor piece, the opponent's will eliminate all the pawns. If you can trade all the pawns for an extra piece, your win evaporates. So maintain the squeeze to win, you must refuse to simplify. Use your extra pieces for restriction, cutting out the kingdom rather than capturing. Engine cannot pass by making winning moves with your rook. You force the engine to move its king away from the last defense and the last pawn. And that's all. So that's what I hope you guys will learn. Even though I decided to draw against Stockfish, you could win even in this position, and that's how you get a 99% accuracy game. So thank you guys, and hope you guys don't send me. Bye.